Hi, my name's Chuck Black, and welcome to this section on modules and packages. Eventually, as you become proficient at building applications, your applications are going to grow to be much larger. And we've talked about separating your code into functions so that you have different discrete components of functionality that can be called by other parts of your code. We've talked about object-oriented programming so that you can create classes which become objects that are then reusable throughout your code. But if your code gets to be to a certain size, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to break it up into different components that we call modules and packages. This is useful not only to you as you build your own application, but it's useful to other people if they want to use some of your code if it happens to be useful. So if you write something that's specifically useful to other members of your team, you're going to want to create a module that they can then import. In fact, a lot of the stuff that you use when you write Python applications has been created in module form or in package form, and you are importing that stuff. So let's look a little bit at what this is all about. So this thing on the left here is your big hunkin' program that you have created, and it's just one very large file that maybe has functions, it has class definitions, etc. And it's gotten to be bigger and bigger, and it's pretty unwieldy and difficult to deal with. So what you want to do is you want to begin to separate the functionality into individual components that we call modules. And in this particular section, we're going to talk about taking utility functionality and putting it into a utility module, and we're going to take object-oriented stuff, which would be our device classes, and move those into a separate device class module. We will then have our main module, which will call these other functions and classes that we've defined elsewhere in the other modules. So it becomes very handy and a good way to organize your code. Now, your software may get big enough that it's no longer useful just to break things up into modules. In this situation, you may want to put things into different packages, in other words, different folders and subdirectories entirely. And this is what we're going to talk about when we talk about packages. The idea of a package is we're going to have a package that will have your main application, but then we'll also have utility packages that have your print and read modules in them, and then you will have a dev class package that has separate modules in each of them. This is just an example of what you may want to do and what you can do in terms of breaking things up. Instead of having everything in the same directory as you do in our modules examples, we will break things into separate directories. So looking at this really quick, what do module files look like? Well, a module file is just a file of Python code. That's it. Typically, a module file will have functions only defined in it. You won't have any general main code that gets executed, although that's possible. The general idea is that your module is going to be shared to others, and they will call your functions that you've defined within your module. So you will define modules. Here we see one module that's defining utility routines and one that's defining device class objects. And then we have our main module, which is going to call them. Now, you'll recall that when we need to call something that's outside of our main application, we need to import it so that Python knows, hey, I need to go elsewhere in order to get this functionality. So you can see over here, I'm importing both util and dev class in order to make that happen. And we will be showing this in this particular section. When you go to the next step of breaking stuff into separate directories, then it's the same general idea, but the difference is you will need to reference them a little bit differently. So we will need to be specifying the package paths, and we'll explain how you end up doing that in this particular section. The other thing that you need to be aware of is there's this special thing in Python we need to define in every directory that's supposed to be a Python package. We need to define a file which can be empty, but which is called init.py with 2 underscores before and after. And once we've done that, we can put these different sets of functionality in different directories all together and invoke those from our main application. So let's look at a demo that actually uses modules and packages. Okay, so here we are giving a demonstration of modules specifically. So what we're going to do is look at a simple example of how modules work in Python. And in order to do this, we're going to use code that we have created and understood from before that involves getting information about devices from a file, creating network device objects to represent the devices we're communicating to, getting interface information from those devices, and printing it out. So here is the file that we are going to be reading device information from, and in this situation, these are actual devices that are live and up and running in my lab. So these are the 3 different devices in my lab that we will be dealing with. So what we've done is we've taken the code that used to be in one long monolithic Python file, and we've separated it into individual modules. So starting from one end, we're going to look at the class object definitions. This is my definition of my device objects. You can see here's my friendly network device base class where I set the name and IP address and username. I have methods in here for connect and get interfaces, but they don't really do anything at this point in time because I only really know how to do that for network device iOS type objects. So this is going to actually connect to a device using pexpect. So we're telnetting into the device. We're successfully getting connected, and then presumably, so somebody will call this connect method after they've created the object, and then somebody will call the get interfaces method, and it will get the interface information and it will return the interfaces to the caller. So this is the device class module. This is a Python module. It's just regular Python code, but it, in this case, has class definitions. So I'm going to get out of my dev class module, and now I'm going to open up my util module. And in my util module, I have placed read devices info as well as print devices info. So I've got both of these 2 utility functions here in my code. And the one thing that you'll notice is because in my read devices info, I'm going to be opening the file, reading through it, and I'm going to be creating network device iOS objects. Because of that, I need to tell Python where to find network device iOS. And so I'm saying, hey, I am importing dev class. That's my Python module that I've created, and that is where Python is going to look for certain of this functionality. You can see I've referenced it here using dev class.network device iOS. So I'm referencing something I've defined in another file. So this is my util module, and now I'm calling my main module, interestingly enough, main, and there isn't much to it. I'm going to, again, because I'm using other Python modules, I need to tell Python which modules those are. My util module, util.py, I'm telling Python, hey, I'm using that. And now I reference it by saying util.read devices info. And I'm passing in the name of the file that it's going to read. Once it's read that, it will return to me a list of network device objects. From here, I can go through the list of network device objects, and one at a time, I'm going to connect to it. I'm going to get the interface information for that. Here's where I'm referencing device.connect and device.getInterfaces, and then I'm going to do a print device info. So I'm dereferencing my object here and calling these particular methods. So if we exit here and we run python main.py with any luck, we will be able to connect to the device, get the interface information for all 3 devices. So it has completed that. I'm going to scroll up a little bit so we can see where I actually typed in the running of Python. Here's where I said run python main.py, and so I connected to 10.30.30.1. I've printed out the information. I've gotten the interfaces information, and here's the interface information for these devices. You can see there's not a whole lot of interesting stuff going on those devices at this moment in time, but I've got it nonetheless. Here's my second device object, which is also an iOS device, and it has gotten information for it And here's my third one, 10.30.30.3. So this has been an example of taking code that was in one large Python file and separating into individual Python modules, referencing those modules using the import statement. So this helps us to get down the path towards creating larger and more fully functional network programmability applications using Python and modules. So thanks for listening to this section on taking your code and breaking it up into separate modules and separate packages so that it can be better organized for your own purposes and so that it can be shared with others who may want to take advantage of the code that you've written.